Well, Kyle? Oh, that's right. He's not here. Need darker clothes. Need darker clothes. It's time. I love bad guys. Villains are just plain more fun. Vader, Jafar, Alan Rickman, Kruger, Loki. Kind of cheating. He becomes a good guy. Hannibal, Ganondorf, Alan Rickman, Vegeta. Kind of cheating. He becomes a good guy. GLaDOS, Joker, Alan Rickman. And yes, I can hear you yelling Sephiroth, but I never played Final Fantasy VII. Sorry. You may know my favorite video game villain. But do you know what made me really start to invest in video game narratives?
You no longer need to bear the weight of your crown.
And do you know what's been on my mind lately?
Arthas.
Death Knight is finally coming to Hearthstone, Blizzard's digital card game in case you don't play it. This is only the second time a new class has been added to Blizzard's digital card game. I have a long history with Hearthstone and a much longer history with being an obsessive Arthas fanboy. I reference this Vader wannabe constantly. In-jokes are abound in our comments section and our Discord chat, so with the other half of this channel away becoming a 2x dad, it feels like the perfect time for me to take this channel hostage and dive deep into my favorite video game villain of all time.
Oh, it is truly, deeply infuriating.
Well, my favorite video game villain so far. I get asked all the time, why are you such a big Arthas fan? So this is it. I'm going to sit here and take you back in time to explain what it was like to stumble across my favorite video game villain and how this fictional character kept me glued to a game and to a universe for the better part of 2 decades. This is when Arthas was young. The year was 2003. 50 Cent was inescapable. Mom's Spaghetti was a Billboard chart topper instead of a meme. Blink-182 hadn't even started their first hiatus yet. But Garrett, Warcraft 3 released in 2002, I hear you yell. Yes, I know Warcraft 3 missed me entirely. I was playing plenty of PC games on the shared family computer. I didn't have my own computer at the time. My gaming circle was more in Half-Life, the original Counter-Strike mod, and The Sims, oddly enough. We had a variety of things we enjoyed playing. And I was still anti-RTS after having only played the original StarCraft on N64 some years earlier, which is its own story that doesn't deserve its own video because the only deep analysis of StarCraft 64 that I have is, don't fucking play it. Anyway, the year was 2003 and I was in my high school art class. An art book was being passed around. This thing ended up in front of me and the cover read, The Art of Warcraft. This was my first introduction to Warcraft. I didn't play the first 2. I'm not even sure if I had heard of them. My memory is pretty foggy in terms of like what games I had heard of, but I hadn't played back then. And also growing up, I wasn't all that into fantasy, but the timing of this book ending up in front of me, it was perfect. 2 of the 3 Lord of the Rings films were out and they quickly made fantasy a big part of myself. I made it a big part of myself. I was also weirdly into the 2002 Two Towers hack and slash game that was on the PS2. I played it a lot, way more than I probably should have. Like, I don't really understand why. It was a solid game, but it's hardly what I or probably anyone else would call deep. But thumbing through the pages, I was completely sucked into this art book. Having my fantasy interest peaked for really the first time ever, it meant that this kind of like 80s-esque, super gritty pencil drawings from folks like Metzen and Samwise, it just looked like the coolest things I had ever seen. I was really the perfect age at the perfect time with the perfect interests that were just starting to coalesce for this art book to kind of just slam into my psyche, and I thought it was awesome. I had to play this game. I loved this art so much that I went and I jumped into my 1996 Honda Accord. Yeah, that's right, that was my first car. And I drove out to the pinnacle of Venice, Florida shopping experiences. That's right, our local Target. And I picked up a copy of Warcraft 3. I stayed up until however late it was that night, until I got to see the cinematic where Arthas ran his father through.
What are you doing, my son?
Succeeding you, father.
And I didn't know it was coming. I know I've revisited the art book since, and there's so many spoilers in it, but I don't think I picked up. It was in class. You're like going through it quickly. I didn't even know what the game was building to, but I couldn't put it down, and I got to that point. And that's when I was like, okay, this is a good starting point. I'm gonna go to sleep now because this game has hyped me up too much. A game story had never captured me like that before. Don't get me wrong, like Ocarina, Half-Life, the first Halo, I had played plenty of games that I thought killed it with their narratives, but I didn't know a strategy game was capable of telling a story like this. It really caught me off guard. And to top it all off, I saw all the shades of my favorite villain of all time in the story that was being told with Arthas. Arthas constantly gets compared to Vader for a reason. The similarities are obvious as f***. Golden child, chosen one hero, dude does the wrong things for the right reasons and becomes the very thing dude swore to destroy. Story we've heard a million times. But again, this is why I think the year is really important. I was playing this in 2003. The final chapter of the prequels was still 2 years out, and a lot of us thought that the depiction of Anakin's eventual turn to the dark side up to that point,
here everything is soft and smooth,
kinda sucked. I was sitting at the family PC with my jaw on the floor, amazed that this isometric strategy game with like a really vibrant color palette had just told a hero's fall from grace story better than my favorite franchise of all time. I was hooked. Arthas was the coolest villain I'd ever seen grace a video game. Let's get to 2008. Okay, actually I lied. Need to bring it back to before WoW released, before talking about Wrath, because my Arthas obsession was the reason I started playing World of Warcraft. And my memory of learning that a Warcraft MMO was coming is super foggy at best. I can't remember what year or what magazine I saw it in. It had to have been close to when I originally had picked up Warcraft 3 because WoW was released in 2004 and I started playing Warcraft 3 in 2003. So there wasn't that long of a time where I could have been playing this game and actually learned about WoW coming down the pipeline. All I know is I was stranded at my local Books A Million shopping with my mom for some reason. Not sure why. I had a driver's license at that point. Love you, Mom. But I went to kill time over in the magazine section. Yes, younger viewers, I get it. I'm old. I picked up some vaguely PC-related gaming magazine and saw a section about how soon players would get to experience Warcraft from the ground level in Blizzard's upcoming MMO, World of Warcraft. Now, I am a very visually motivated person. Don't believe me? Watch our last video where I literally gave an art lecture about a Final Fantasy XIV dungeon. My imagination is extremely visual, and there was more than one point in my playthrough of Warcraft 3 where I thought being able to see Azeroth from the boots of a single soldier would have been freaking awesome. So this was all I really needed to get excited about World of Warcraft. That and the assumption I would get to see the conclusion to Arthas' story, which is hilarious if you played World of Warcraft right at launch, because then you know we had to wait forever to see the Lich King again. Long story short about the launch of WoW, I didn't end up playing WoW right at launch. No one in my circle had ever paid for a subscription before for a game, and I ended up getting sucked into a Guild Wars group because we thought giving our credit card to a website, we were still in that point where we thought giving our card to a website was like a scam. Anyway, that game was fun, but it was no World of Warcraft, and I still can't believe there wasn't a fucking jump button in the original Guild Wars. come freshman year of college for me, October 2005. I finally took the plunge and fired up my first ever game subscription, gawked at all the Hallows End decorations, abused the shit out of the jump button that Guild Wars had so cruelly denied me, and set off on my Night Elf Hunter adventure. Thing is though, there was no Arthas. Or was he? He wasn't there. And I kind of was an idiot, like I didn't know how to play the game really well, and I leveled extremely slowly, so I wouldn't hit 58 until BC dropped, so I barely saw any of the Scourge and Lich King references in the Plaguelands. But from that point on, WoW owned my soul. It was like at least 33% of my personality. Like, you need to understand that. The rest was, I don't know, mostly emo. And the remains of that, whatever was left, went to my studies at art school. Seriously, I don't know how I graduated. I spent way too much time on World of Warcraft. My grades suffered. When I wasn't playing WoW, I was either listening to WoW podcasts or talking about WoW with all of my friends that all also played WoW. In vanilla, I barely understood the game and leveled slowly. In BC, I started to raid and eventually at the end of it learned to tank. And then 2008 came around. This was the most hyped I had ever been for any video game. It was finally happening. An entire expansion dedicated to the Lich King. I was finally going to get to set foot in Northrend. I would get to look up from the ground level, up at the seemingly endless spire of the Frozen Throne.
Justice has come!
I was really hyped. Also, I'd geek out about Death Knight here, but I actually didn't. I didn't main one until Legion. Yeah, some Arthas fanboy I am. Eight years later, I would at last get to see the conclusion to Warcraft 3 and take part in the ultimate fate of Arthas Menethil. Again, technically more than 8 years because patch 3.3 Fall of the Lich King wouldn't bring Icecrown and with it the final boss battle against Arthas himself until damn near 2010, and I sure as shit didn't down Arthas in 2009 when it first dropped. And Wrath actually lived up to the hype. Like, listen, like, yeah. To say shit has been rocky with Blizzard lately is putting it very mildly, and the reception to recent releases from Blizz could be best described as mixed. You're looking pretty decent, Dragonflight. But in 2008, I want you to understand that the hype for Wrath of the Lich King could not have been higher, and I really want you to understand that it absolutely delivered. World of Warcraft reached the highest subscriber count the game had ever reached and would ever reach from that point on. World of Warcraft literally peaked during Wrath of the Lich King. This expansion was everything Warcraft 3 fans, and more importantly, me, ever wanted. The expansion being something different, something great. It was evident from before you even logged in. The intro cinematic was a massive departure from vanilla and Burning Crusade.
Remember, our line has always ruled with wisdom and strength. And I know you will show restraint when exercising your great power.
Instead of focusing on like a handful of stand-ins for players, it focused entirely on Arthas and how his powers have fully formed in his time spent secluded in Northrend, while really badass voiceover from his father just like ghostly played out in the background.
I watched with pride as you grew into a weapon of righteousness.
It's great. Go watch it. I'm sure I'm showing footage right now, but literally, if you haven't seen this thing or if you haven't watched in a while, it still holds up. Go watch it. This is a terrible way to experience it. For the first time in the game's history, the big bad actually showed up to harass you throughout the entire expansion. Arthas was a fully present villain, something that like could not even be close to be said for Illidan back in BC. The first ever in-game cinematic, Wrathgate.
Come forth, coward, and answer for your crimes!
It came in perfectly kind of in this midpoint while you're leveling up, where it reestablished and upped the stakes of the war that the Horde and the Alliance were fighting against the Scourge, and also like blew our minds because we literally had never seen an in-game cinematic in the game before. We didn't know that you can do that. It was kind of cheating. Great job, everybody that had something to do with that. Shout out. How you doing, Taryn Gregory? You're a cool dude. Arthas even crashed a late game raid to surprise reveal one of my favorite raid bosses and favorite villains, other favorite villains in Warcraft, Anubarak.
Our guests have arrived, just as the Master promised.
The WoW team wielded Arthas and the denizens of Northrend masterfully. It felt like they understood every tiny detail that made the Lich King related side of Warcraft compelling and found the perfect ways to make that exist and land alongside even like larger meta lore inclusions like Yogg-Saron and the Old Gods. And these master strokes all came to a head with Icecrown Citadel.
Had your kids, had your wife.
I never thought I'd
Trust. America!
For you, I'm gonna let you finish.
Icecrown Citadel. Wrath's final legit raid. Sorry, not sorry, Ruby Sanctum. Dropped alongside patch 3.3, Fall of the Lich King on December 8th, 2009. I had this key art as my desktop for like literally years. 4 wings. The lower spire and 3 others that were themed after the Unholy Blood and Frost Death Knight specializations. These are some of my favorite boss fights ever. 12 bosses, including a jetpack flying ship battle that I still love to this day. The most vampire-as fight I've ever seen. Sindragosa, which nearly broke my raid's will to live. And the Lich King daddy himself, Arthas, helped bring Wrath of the Lich King to one of the most satisfying ends I have ever seen in a game, let alone in an MMO. It's also worth noting that this patch brought in 3 additional dungeons that all focused entirely on Icecrown and Arthas and just made me really happy. The Frozen Halls brought the Forge of Souls, the Pit of Saran, Hall of Reflection, where we got to see the souls come out of Frostmourne and run away from Arthas, doing the slow Darth Vader death march towards us as we escaped alongside either Jaina or Sylvanas, depending on whether we were Alliance or Horde. Can you tell I geeked out about this? But the raid was where my focus was. Pushing content 2 to 3 nights a week with my main 10-man progression group. Shout out to my old raid team on the 4 Horde Guild. Sindragosa was by far our biggest barrier. I think we may have been stuck on her for like damn near a month. And when we finally downed her, it was ridiculous. Our mage threw the killing blow while the rest of the raid was dead and then died herself, but the game counted the kill. The cheering over event blew out my headset. Like with all MMOs, WoW, it doesn't end. It still hasn't ended. But this...
Father, is it over?
Was the most I ever felt like I beat World of Warcraft. Shortly after was the first time I ever took a break from WoW. I had been subscribed nonstop since I started playing back in Halloween of 2005. I came back for Cataclysm, but I wouldn't seriously raid again until Legion. Cata was fine. Mists is low-key my second favorite expansion, and Legion impressed the absolute hell out of me. But nothing in WoW has captured me like Wrath did. It was the highest point in the game I have literally spent the most time playing. It stuck the landing. Arthas' influence on MMO fans and pop culture can still be felt to this day. Maybe it's just because so many of my circles know like what a shameless fan I am, but it's not just me still randomly bringing up this fictional dude in conversation more than 10 years after millions of nerds helped murder him atop the Frozen Throne. He was referenced in Shadowlands.
Arthas.
It was kind of lame. And he's the poster child for Hearthstone's next expansion. And it looks freaking awesome. And hey, maybe one day they'll make a Warcraft movie about the story we actually wanted to see. Hey, Henry Cavill, I hear you've got some extra time on your hands. I feel like current WoW is very done with Arthas, which for the most part, I'm fine with. As I said, I think Wrath really and truly stuck the landing. I didn't need anything else, except maybe the Frost, Death Knight, Legion quests. Those were really good. Seriously, if you're If you're an Arthas fan, go and play those Frost Death Knight quests from Legion. They are amazing. And after seeing how they tied the Jailer to Arthas' lore, I kind of wish they decided to be done with Arthas a little sooner. But I think it's a good thing that WoW looks like it's stepping out of Arthas' shadow. It's time for something new. It's time for that game and that world to move on to something we haven't seen before. But hey, Hearthstone's just getting started.
There must always be a Lich King.